Hey, blessings. Welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. Again, in Exodus, we have one more day left in Exodus, and then we're out of this really cool book. But today we're in 37 and 38. And we're getting to a point where I know in the past that I've come to places like this in the read and thought, what is, why do I have to read about this table and these lampstands? And I know we've spoken on some of these things and why they're important, but today just brings us back up again. We're reading about furnishings in the temple. But when you look at the Ark of God, the Ark of the Covenant, this is not boring stuff, and this is the box, covered in gold that the most important objects in Israel's history are placed into. We know the Ten Commandments are placed into this. I think that's what everybody knows as far as the Ark of the Covenant. And if you ask what was in the Ark, most people would understand that it's the Ten Commandments. But did you also realize that there's a jar of manna that will be placed in there to remember God's provision for the Israelites? There's also this tree limb, an almond tree limb that buds later on in the story, buds almonds. And it shows that God has chosen the Levitical line to be the royal priesthood. So there are three items that will wind up being placed in the ark, and they're all really important things, and we'll get into them as we come to their stories. But on top of the ark sits God's mercy seat, and on top of that is the two cherubim. So there's a lot to the ark that maybe is not explained in this story, but is going to keep coming up as we go along. So we want to make sure that as we're reading through and we come to something like this, that we pay attention to it and read it and really commit it to memory, because then when we come up on some of these other stories later, we'll go, oh, what was the ark and what was that all about? Read it and understand it so that we know we don't have to waste time going back and looking. Not that it's ever a waste of time to go back and look at God's word. That's what I'm saying. But for time management, our time is better spent by knowing this ahead of time. So number 2, chapter 37, verse 6 or 10 through 16 is the table. Why would a table be important? Well, when you read this part, or hopefully you've already read it, but think back as you read about the table and understand that this is a foreshadowing of Jesus, because the item that goes on the table is the showbread. Okay? Bread is the foreshadowing of Jesus coming. Jesus is the bread of life. So when you read it from that lens and trying to understand this is foreshadowing the coming of Jesus Christ, it's pretty cool, because he's not due to show up for a couple thousand years. Then we've got the third thing in chapter 37, verses 17 through 24, and it's the lampstands. We've talked about the lampstands, but this is a foreshadowing of Jesus as well, because he will come and he will be the light of the world. And when you start realizing that New Testament way down here where Jesus is, but then you've got Old Testament, and the Old Testament points to the prophecy of Christ coming, it really makes it come more alive and understanding the symbolism of what we're reading today. So don't ever look, whenever you come across something on the Bible and go, this is kind of boring, stop for a second and think, God put this in there for a particular purpose. I wonder what that is. And it's always a good thing to pray before you read and say, hey, Lord, man, if there's something you want to reveal to me or show me while I'm reading, please open my mind and my heart to understand what you're trying to teach me here. Just a great way of looking at God's word. Tomorrow we're going to be in Exodus 39 and 40. And like I said, this is our last day in Exodus. So make sure you read ahead, come back, and let's look and see if we can find some kind of law enforcement principle or just some kind of takeaway that can really have a lot of influence on our life and how we live our life from this point forward. So anyway, be safe. I'll see you tomorrow.